You're welcome again, sir, to AfroTalk TV. We're glad to have you here today. So what would you say is the importance of ENETKİ as a company being here today at the SAHA Expo 2026?
ENETKİ Defense Company is a company that manufactures low-altitude unmanned aerial vehicles for defense. And the importance is that in our current time, the wars that happen during this time, more and more smaller, more practical, faster, low-altitude unmanned aerial vehicles are used. You see this every day. You hear FPV, first-person view drones. You hear a lot of custom-made drones being used during conflicts. The platforms that we build are similar to that concept. We have drones that can easily be deployed in 15 minutes. We build it for intelligence, surveillance, and reconnaissance. And this is very useful for border protection, for rural area protection, counter-terrorism, border protection, and there are lots of use cases like this. You don't necessarily need a runway to use our drones. And for a lot of military organizations and security apparatus, this is a very rising concept.
Definitely. You talked about, what those drones can do, and you mentioned security, you mentioned counterterrorism, you mentioned also border control, which I think is very important for the African continent. So how does this apply to the African continent? And has there been, your works that you've carried out in African countries, and what are your future plans for this certain geography?
Okay. With regards to security and protection and defense, as you know, the drones themselves actually are sort of a revolution, because the recent conflicts show that the use of drones are so effective that you don't need a lot of expensive systems. They are not necessarily useful on the battlefield. For example, the use of tanks, the use of very expensive aircraft, fighter aircrafts, they are not necessary to win the war, to win the conflicts, to secure your borders. Now, this is a continuation of that. Now, you don't even necessarily need to use very expensive drones even themselves. The drones that are, multi-million-dollar drones that you need a runway to fly from, and they can do operations for tens of hours, 12 hours, 16 hours. In a lot of the cases, a lot of the missions can be carried out by smaller 25 to 50, 70 kilogram drones that can operate from 2 hours to 5 hours. This concept is being implemented by military organizations around the world, and Africa has a chance to implement this for their own security systems, for their own defense systems. And Africa can actually capture this and actually can more quickly adapt to this new reality, and it's its opportunity, because lots of other countries, they already have lots of fighter aircraft, but Africa has a chance to, in a lot of cases, Africa has a chance to build their military according to this new doctrine. So I think we have a lot of good relations with many African countries, and we see this every day. They are interested in our UAVs for border protection, for counterterrorism efforts, and it makes sense because you don't need a runway, for example, for our UAVs. You can simply use a 10 meter by 10 meter area to take off from and carry out a mission of 2 hours or 3 hours and come back easily with 2 personnel. And that's and you can have this in many places, and that's a very easy operation. You don't need tens of people on the ground to carry out this operation, which is the case for a lot of other systems.